Hey, this is Ben, and today we're going to take a look at how Christians get it wrong on issues of sex, gender, homosexuality, and how we're really blowing it and really allowing Christianity to be destroyed and what it is to be ripped out. So let's take a look at this question of gender. Now, a lot of Christians respond to this question of gender and we say, oh, there are only two genders. You're either in the Boy Scouts or the Girl Scouts, okay? And this idea that there's 100 genders, this is nonsense. And there is no third option. That's it. The problem is it's clear that there are people who have both male and female genitalia from birth, and they're not exactly male or female. Okay? They even have both male and female DNA. And they're called hermaphrodites. And then there's other questions of like, well, what if somebody, gets in an accident and their biological body parts, get destroyed? If you're basing everything off what they are biologically, what if you can physically change that? Okay. Now let's just take a look at what the Bible says here in Matthew chapter 19. This is a teaching about divorce from Jesus. He's being interrogated about divorce. But let's just take a look starting in verse 3. And Pharisees came up to him and tested him by asking, "Is it lawful to divorce one's wife for any cause?" Jesus answered, have you not read that he who created them from the beginning made them male and female, and said, Therefore a man shall leave his father and his mother and hold fast to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. So they are no longer two but one flesh. What therefore God has joined together, let man not separate. Now we'll get to the homosexuality question in a minute, but let's focus on this transgender question. They said to him, Why then did Moses command one to give a certificate of divorce and to send her away? He said to them, Because of your hardness of heart Moses allowed you to divorce your wives, but from the beginning it was not so. And I say to you, whoever divorces his wife except for sexual immorality and marries another commits adultery. The disciples said to him, we don't know exactly when this was, but it says, the disciples said to him, If such is the case of a man with his wife, it is better not to marry. But he said to them, Not everyone can receive this saying, but only those to whom it is given. For there are eunuchs. So eunuchs, it implies someone who's never going to get married. It implies a male who lacks the male genitalia or the ability to get a woman pregnant. Okay, typically because he's been castrated. All right. Now the thing is, they say they're asking the question: It's better for a man not to marry? And then Jesus says, not everyone can receive this saying, but only those whom it is given. For there are eunuchs who have been so from birth. In other words, there are people who will never be able to marry because they've been that way from birth. And there are eunuchs who have been made eunuchs by men, and there are eunuchs who have made themselves eunuchs for the sake of the kingdom of heaven. Let the one who is able to receive this receive it. So in other words, Jesus makes the point, there is a third option. There are people who don't fit into the gender binary of male and female. But he refers to them all as eunuchs. And, the reason why that, fits with what he said earlier is partly because of this homosexuality question. So we'll just unpack that right quick. What he says there is, from the beginning, God made them male and female and said, Therefore a man shall leave his father and his mother and hold fast to his wife. So in other words, according to Jesus here in Matthew 19:4 and 5, the reason marriage exists, leaving your father and mother and holding fast to your wife, and the two shall become one flesh, the reason that exists is because there's genders, because there's a male and female gender. And therefore that implies, if there was no gender, there would be no marriage. In other words, marriage exists because gender exists, according to Jesus. Therefore, no gender equals no marriage. So from a Christian perspective, yes, there are people who don't fit into this gender binary category. But that doesn't mean that, we pretend like they don't exist. They do exist. They really do exist. But from Jesus' perspective, they don't get married. All right? That's not why marriage exists. Okay. Now, the reason this creates so much trouble for Christians today is because of, not really because anyone's really contradicting Jesus so much as it's just a burden of proof fallacy that's being used, a logical fallacy, a fallacious form of reasoning where essentially if I was to tell you that Abraham Lincoln, Bigfoot, and myself all play poker on Tuesday nights, and I was to give you no evidence for it and expect you to prove me wrong, or else that means that I'm correct, that would be a burden of the proof fallacy. In other words, I've shifted the burden of proof to you. The burden of proof is on the one making the claim. So in other words, if someone claims that they don't fit into the gender binary, they actually have to prove that. Okay? And the reason that they've shifted the burden of proof is they've said, I somehow know deep down inside that, I don't really fit into the two categories. And no one can really say anything about that. No one can really disagree with that. That's why it's hard for you to come. You don't want to come at them because you're coming at their feelings and saying your feelings are wrong. But the reality is, the burden of proof is on the one making the claim. So if you're going to say, hey, I don't fit into the two categories, you need to back that up. And what people do is they try to shift the burden of proof either with their feelings or they shift it with science. And what they'll do is they'll say, there's a lot we don't understand about the human body and about the human brain and about what makes us male versus female, and we don't really know. There's all kinds of new research about what goes on in the womb and how you're formed, and then what happens after you're out, and by age 15 all kinds of things may have happened, different influences, and you may not have developed correctly, all kinds of weird stuff goes on in the body that we don't understand. And what they're doing is they're taking the frontier of science, the edge of our knowledge, and saying out there beyond that is proof that this person is neither male nor female. All the evidence we have right now suggests that this person is a male, or in other cases a female. But there's a limit to our scientific knowledge. If we go beyond that limit, we'll find out that this person is actually, there's more to it. Now, again, this is a shifting of the burden of proof. There is no reason for anyone to believe your extra thing that you want everyone to believe in until you provide evidence for it. And to say that you will find evidence one day, well, that's great. Go look for it. And if you do find evidence for it, then we will accept that this person is neither male nor female. But until you do, why should anyone believe you? And even if you're saying it about yourself, people say dumb stuff about themselves all the time. I'm reminded of a joke. There's an insane asylum, and the doctor comes in and he says, "Why do you have your hand in your shirt today, fella?" And the guy says, "Because I'm Napoleon." And the doctor says, "Who told you were Napoleon?" And he says, "God did." And then all of a sudden you hear the guy in the bed next to him says, "I did not." Okay, so yeah, it's possible for people to say things about themselves that are truly ridiculous, that can't possibly be true, because you can't possibly be God, because if you were God, then there would be all kinds of problems, right? So anyway, let's get to this homosexuality question, because I think it's a bigger one, and it's a way that Christianity has been hijacked. Gay marriage was legalized in 2015, I guess, in a general sense. And the president at the time, Barack Obama, got on Twitter and he tweeted, "Love wins." And so what that does is it takes all of the Christians who oppose gay marriage, and now we're opposed to love. Now Christianity is anti-love. Isn't that fascinating? Christianity, the religion that says love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, where the founder of the faith died for those who hate him, who died to pay the punishment of others, where it says in John chapter 4 over and over, God is love. In other words, that our God is love itself. And somehow this religion has been turned into the anti-love religion because it opposed gay marriage. And so this is a subtle distinction, but it's absolutely vital. And I want you to hear what I have to say now. Are you listening? We as Christians do not have a problem with two men or two women loving one another. And in fact, we have a problem with them not loving one another. We believe that they should love one another to the point of being willing to die for each other. But when it comes to marriage and when it comes to sex specifically, our belief as Christians is that that is not the appropriate way to express that love. We don't have a problem with two men loving one another. But we think that if they're having sex, they're not expressing the love they have for one another in the correct way. And there's all kinds of ways to demonstrate how we as Christians really blow it on this. So let's say that you have a son and he comes home and tells you that his buddy, Philip, is actually his gay lover, and they want to get married. Okay. As a parent, how do you respond to that? And I think a lot of parents would say, I don't know how to respond to that. I still love you, son. This is the thing. We need to take a step back and say, the fact that you want to marry this person means that you're really, really, really good friends with this person. It's very hard to find that in this world. It's unlikely to find that. It's not going to be easy to find that. And you really should be incredibly happy for your son that he has found a friend like this. This is a special thing, and odds are he won't find someone like that ever, whether he's male or female, whether he's, homosexual or heterosexual. It's hard to find someone like that. And on top of that, it probably won't last, statistically speaking. So, as Christians, our position is we think it's wonderful that you and this person are this close of friends. We think that is fantastic and very, very, very good, and we're very, very supportive of that. But we don't think that you are expressing your love for one another in the correct way, and that you need to find other ways to express that. That's all our position is. Okay? And then let's say that you are a gay couple, and as a pastor who maybe has a gay couple coming to your church or something like that, should you as a pastor counsel them or endorse them to get divorced? In other words, should couples who are married that are homosexual couples, should they get divorced? And my answer would be no, because they made a promise to one another. And you say, well, Ben, they shouldn't have got married in the first place. Well, let's face facts, okay? That's kind of what Jesus was talking about with the divorce question. A lot of heterosexual couples get married that find out later they really weren't the right one for one another. Should they get divorced? No, that would be a betrayal of the promise that they made to one another. And I don't know about you, but just from my personal experience, I have seen way too many couples that really, when you look at it, like, these two people really don't belong together. But the bottom line is, they made that commitment and they keep it. And I've seen plenty of them find ways to work it out. They really do. It's sad that things were that way, but the bottom line is, you made that kind of promise to one another and you made it out of love. Shouldn't you keep it? Shouldn't you keep it? Even if it wasn't right? And you may say, well, I just can't believe that this couple would be in my church, just in sin like this. Okay, but is it not the case when a heterosexual couple is not really in love with one another, but they stay married? Is that not something that goes on all the time? Aren't there tons of marriages that aren't really right in every church? Okay? And what I'm not saying is that you should change your position on homosexuality. Because, again, the verses from Jesus were very clear here. Marriage exists because the male and female gender exists. So therefore, if the male and female gender did not exist, there would be no marriage. Okay? Alright? That's what we're saying there. If marriage, then gender. If no gender, then no marriage. Alright? Now, I guess that's enough for now, and I hope that video makes some sort of sense. And why don't you check out these verses for yourself? Thank you for your time.